Well, good afternoon on Monday in our 43rd day of our 99 days. I'm really, really so curious how you're all doing. And um, we're kind of almost halfway through. So I guess a lot is happening within you. Um, Whether you're more conscious of it or not, like I said before, trust that it will change. A couple of days ago. But for sure, you will be experiencing a higher level of awareness by now. Even if you're not so consistent with the practice of going into presence yet, um, the awareness of things that are happening in your daily life must have become more present now. So I want to talk today about how that process actually is happening and how you can facilitate that process to make it very beneficial to yourself, very healing to yourself. Because however long we are going through, or however deep we are going into this path of self realization and clearing everything out and trying to heal everything that's ever been within us, kept within us, whether it's from our own experience or because it's a collective experience we're dealing with, life will always go through ups and downs. And the ups can be, or the ups and downs can be huge wave, like a wave pattern with huge highs and deep lows. But it can also be very minor, unnoticeable things that are happening. But they're still just as useful to notice. Because most of the time, in my experience, the little subtle emotions that happen are actually the same ones that are happening all over again and again. And because we don't notice them, they keep returning. So today I want to show you why it is that it keeps returning if you don't deal with it. And yesterday I talked about the fact that we actually create life. And that doesn't necessarily mean we create a complete new house we're living from one second to the next second, or we create a complete new job once we focus on it. But we do go through a creation process or a cycle during our life again and again and again. And this cycle has three phases. And some of the persons I follow online showed me this recently, and I thought it's so helpful to see that these three phases are the basis of everything. And once you see through these three phases, then you can understand why things are not moving in your life, or positively said, how you can move things in your life. So this cycle of creation is the first phase is actually when you're just going happily through your day. You're happy to go to work, you're happy to do your things planned, you have ideas, you have inspiration, you want to talk to people and share your inspiration or your ideas, or you want to have or whatever comes up during the day that really feels like an up, like a creative energy within you to get something done with a positive energy. And then during that process, you can receive or get a trigger. And a trigger is anything that emotionally gets you out of balance. So you feel something within yourself that's uncomfortable. And I think I've explained triggers more in detail before. But it is something you sense in your system, and it makes you feel uncomfortable and nervousness or restless or literally it's painful or very emotional, like tears are coming up, or irritation, or angriness, or whatever emotion comes up. There's something that's happening, and this is what you feel, despite of what is the cause, or what is the circumstance, or whether it's whether it's happening within you or with someone else you're with. Even if it's someone else who is triggered or feels emotional, then you can sense that. So then you actually are invited to release that emotion, and I'll go through that phase a little deeper in a second. But after that emotion is actually subdued, whatever you do with it or don't do with it, finally we get into this relaxed phase of where we just don't feel triggered. We're not really creative, excited about things. We're just very relaxed, and it feels all okay. We're in balance. We're kind of relaxing with someone else. We're sharing information, but it's not like the other phase of being triggered, and it's not like the phase of being very excited and in a creative, forward-moving mode. So the third phase is more like relaxed, in balance state where it's more like neutral. So these three phases always follow up on each other with short cycles or big cycles. And if you're not aware of the second phase, the trigger phase, where the emotion shows up, you kind of get in the repetitive cycle each time again and again. And that same trigger, that same emotion is reflecting back to you until you've dealt with it or released it, or at least even seen it. So now going through this phase a little bit deeper, there are 5 or 6 different steps to get more clarity on what the trigger is and actually what it's asking you, why it's there. So the first phase is noticing a trigger. And that's actually the most important phase, because if you don't notice it, you cannot deal with it. It will come back every time a similar thing is happening, and that emotion in your body is coming up again and is showing to you, hey, I'm still here. I need some attention from you. Because actually that's what a trigger is. It's something in your body. Even if someone else is triggered and you can feel his or her emotion, then you can feel that because it relates within you to a similar emotion. So that's why you recognize it. So if someone else next to you, with you, is telling you an emotional story about a family member or about something he or she experienced, and although you have not had the same experience, you might be able to relate to that feeling of, could be loneliness or grief or loss. And then the tears might well up in your eyes as well, because it shows you that there's something there within you that's not seen yet. So what the body actually says when it shows you a trigger is, this part in your body is not healed yet. It's out of balance. It's actually sick in a sense. And it doesn't mean that it stays like that forever, because it can be healed, it can be released. But if it's ignored, it gets worse and worse, and then you finally do get sick. So this self-healing system of the body that I strongly believe in and experience many times in my life, that's actually your guiding system, helping you to keep you in balance. So these triggers are very, very useful. They're not just annoyances during the day of you being incomplete or imperfect or You have this inner critic voice that's still not subdued. But it can be so many different layers that triggers still show up because we are a complex system and we live in a world, part of a collective consciousness. So many things are still happening within our system. How much we have healed, and it's not to make a drama out of this that nothing will ever be done or completed. Not at all. It's more like see it as a very useful guiding system to heal yourself and to become lighter in the sense that you go through these emotions with more ease and more lightful. And then it's less hard on you, so you even though there's a trigger, it doesn't really bother you so much as it did before. You don't, because you don't hang on to it. So this first phase is noticing the trigger. And I made some notes, so that's why I'm looking down every now and then to not to forget one of the phases. So once again, this trigger is actually that you hold on to something within yourself or outside yourself. And you believe that actually to be true in that moment. And it makes you feel bad in a way. Even if you're, whatever the trigger is, it always makes you feel bad in a certain way. And often the trigger makes you give the reaction that you kind of want to blame it outside of yourself, onto the circumstance or onto someone else. Even if it's as minor as the annoyances in traffic I shared so many times about. It's always a great example because it's actually something that's really minor compared to other triggers or intense experience you had in the past, because just being annoyed in traffic because of someone else's actions is not really a big thing, is it? You can really use that every time you are triggered in traffic to really practice with becoming aware of triggers, becoming aware of this emotion that flares up. So then the second step, when you became aware of this trigger, and that's actually the becoming aware is actually the process of becoming self-reflective. And so when you have noticed a trigger, then a narrative starts in your mind. It tells you a story about what's happening, what this emotion is telling you. And depending on what the trigger is, this narrative is very strong or very lighthearted. But becoming aware of what that narrative is makes it more easy to go into the next phase after this one and to question it. So when you recognize the narrative, and whatever the narrative tells you, whether it's about you or about something else that happens or about something in the world that happened and it's completely outside of your control, then still it's a narrative. It's still something that tells something about you, why it hits you, why it triggers you. And so where do you make this narrative, or why do you make this event that is happening personal? And where you identified with it? And when you are telling yourself a narrative, so this little story about what's happening, then you seeing that actually only from one perspective in that moment. So the first step was becoming aware of the trigger. That's just physically sensing that there's something happening in your body. And secondly, what is the story that starts there? What's the narrative that this is telling you? And then thirdly, you might like to be able to question and inquire the narrative, like how true is it actually? I can see you actually have to step out of your own perspective and get to the greater perspective of all and see if you can find a different perspective to the same narrative. So, yes, I have been hurt before in the same way by, for instance, the family patterns. But how true is it that it's really happening again? Is it my sensitivity that is happening? And do I just read this comment in a way that it triggers me? And even if I can find confirmation from other people who are reading it the same way, then I can still question, is it really meant like that? Or was it just a silly joke and I take it personally and I got triggered because it relates to me, to the past patterns? And it's still not healed there. That wound is still there within me. So questioning and inquiring the narrative helps you to find different perspectives and see if it's completely 100% true. And that's even another detail which you can become aware about, to release these emotions, even if it's just a little bit, is to ask yourself, okay, I do feel bad now, right now, and I kind of feels very depressing, this emotion. And then it feels like you kind of have these sentences like, I always feel like this, or it's always happening, or it never comes my way, or there's always these words of always and never are in your narratives. And then question that, is it 100% true that it's always like that, or it's 100% true that nothing ever happens in a positive way to you? And you probably will see that you're not 100% of the time feeling so bad. But you have certain moments where you feel so bad. So the fact that it's not 100% true makes already a change to your story, to your narrative you're telling yourself. And that's already opening up to release it. That's actually the first step when something is very strong and very repetitive for you. And even if you are a person who is going, I mean, we're all different. So some people are going more positive through life than other people. Some people have been nourished and being confirmed very positively when they were a child by their parent. So they more easily find their strength within themselves and their positive thinking than other people. But even if you're a positive thinker and always trying to see the best thing in everything, you can still ignore actually the triggers that happen. But you just easily step over it and try to override it actually with a positive thought. And overriding it with a positive thought doesn't automatically mean that you have healed the trigger. You just have kind of pushed it away, perhaps. So it might be really just useful also for the positive thinkers amongst us to just really look at the narrative that was very briefly there when the trigger came up, or even become aware of a trigger. But you probably are when you're a positive thinker. You can feel something coming up. And then you quite easily step over it, and then you skip the narrative and override it with another one, a positive one, and then you move on. And if the same emotion, the same trigger comes back again and again, then apparently it's not been seen yet. So then this positive thinking doesn't help so much anymore. Then it's time to go a layer deeper and actually see what's been shared there by your system. So the first step was noticing the trigger. The second step is identifying actually what it's telling you. So the narrative, yeah. So the second step is identifying the narrative. What is the story? And the third step is questioning and inquiring what this narrative actually is telling you and how true is it? And then in that, how true is it? You'll immediately hit again the fact that you are probably attached to this identification of yourself with this story. So can you let go of that attachment, of this part of the identity you have within you? So this part of insecurity or not being good enough or want to change something, but it's too difficult, so I don't bother anymore, or whatever it's telling you, there's still some identity there that is not seen, um, or it is seen, but you're still attached to that old story within you. And then the next step is actually understanding how useful is it to hold on to this trigger and to hold on to this narrative. Is it really useful to feel that again and again and again and again? Is it really useful to make a big story, a big narrative out of this, what happened? Is it really useful to blame the other? Is it really useful to keep repeating the same situation for yourself? Or is it useful to give power away actually to others? Because you can only be triggered and stay triggered because you give your power away. You literally give your power away to something else or to circumstances, and that makes you feel bad. So understanding how useful it is and why it feels so bad, then you might find an opening actually to tell yourself, well, it's not so useful to hold on to this. I can't literally not see any benefit actually in it anymore. So then it's really time to open up to this emotion, this imbalance from your system that's showing up, and to nurture yourself. And that's actually you could even imagine it as the nurturing of a mother holding a child, and just and soothe it and care for the child, like it's okay, you're all good, and it's all fine, and I'm here, and I love you, and that's actually what you're telling yourself, even if this is a little emotion or a little trigger, and this sounds like a very huge process to do. But doing this with a great intention, and because it's all about intention, not so much about what you say. And it's the same process I've shared before, like opening this heart space to release it. So there's not much doing there, but there is an intention to really open yourself with complete love to this emotion. And then it can be released. So with this releasing part, you actually embrace this wound in yourself. So the fifth step is nurturing yourself, and the sixth step is embracing this wound. And that's actually, well, you could argue if the fifth and the sixth are different steps, but finding ways to nurture yourself needs some practice, perhaps, or needs some creativity, you could even say, to find new ways of nurturing yourself. Because if the old ways no longer work, because your mind kind of saw through it, and it's kind of telling you a new narrative that is no longer working, then it's useful to find different ways to nurture yourself. And just fill into what sentences help you to release this pain, or what sentences help you to just actively open your heart space and open up to love, because that's quite a challenging step actually to take when you're really triggered, when you feel really low in that moment and in pain. Then it's really, really difficult to you as the same person in that moment actually is to open up your heart, because you really want your story to be heard by someone else. I'm really, really sad here, and I'm really feeling very sorry for myself, and I need to blame you because you have caused this wound within me. And then being in that same situation and then opening up to your heart is a huge step. So that's why this inquiry of what is the narrative actually telling, and kind of stepping out of it a little bit and getting a little bit less identified with the pain, helps you to get in a more neutral space, to actually become the mother of yourself, to nurture the little child within you. And these 6 steps, if you practice with it, um, then it goes more automatically and more flowing actually. And obviously, depending on the trigger, it's what's causing the trigger. It's more difficult to go through these steps than other times. But start practicing with little ones. Start practicing with being annoyed when you are in. Oh my God! I just found out that my microphone was not plugged in well. Oops! I'm going to check if this is been working, and otherwise I have to record it again. Hope not. Um, so um, where was I? Yeah, practice with little things like being annoyed in a shop or in a supermarket if someone, well, in whatever way, irritates you, or the line is not going fast enough, or just see when the trigger comes up. See what the story is telling you. Like I always pick the wrong line, the line that takes longer, or I always pick, I don't know, they're always so slow or whatever. And then just see if you can see a different perspective to the same situation and how useful it is to hold on to this trigger, and then uh, release it. Because even the step for me is like seeing how useful it is already such a release, because once I see the uselessness of it, well, once I see that's actually so not useful to hold on to this, I already start smiling, and then I think like, oh, what the hell I'm doing? Who's the silly one here? And then it already releases actually. But you need you need to step out of your own perspective. You need to step out of this narrative, this story that's telling you, in order to be able to lighten up actually a little bit, to be able to yeah, to really nurture it. And even if you're irritated in a supermarket for something silly, then still, why is it irritating you? What in you is still annoyed by this stupid nuisance? Perhaps it is because you are in a hurry and you're afraid to be late for an appointment, or people are waiting at your doorstep and you still need to clean the house or whatever. Um, and then, so the trigger there is actually telling you, like, oh my God, I'm late again and I don't want to feel embarrassed. Or what might they think of me if I'm late again? Or I might not be the perfect host if my house is not clean enough in time, or whatever the story is telling you. And then it's actually telling you that there's some control system within you still very active. And this control system is probably hiding an insecurity within you of not being good enough, or afraid of being judged, or afraid of being rejected. So this little event in the supermarket of being irritated, of not going fast enough through the line at the payment system, might actually be related to an insecurity at a deeper level, or a fear for rejection at a deeper level. And most likely, if you go through all these triggers in deeper layers, what's it telling you? What's it telling you? What's it telling you? Then you most likely find the same kind of stories every time, again and again. Or the cause for every story is most of the time the same or similar. So I hope these 5 steps, 6 steps, and this the fact that we're always in this cycle of creation, so we never can be full time in an app all day. It. I don't know anyone who always is going through the same up feeling, like creative and exciting force, creative force, full time, 24 hours a day. So there is, of course, there is a time to be relaxed and be more neutral and be very fulfilled. And in between those two phases, there are emotions. And a trigger can also even be a positive emotion, like pure excitement, like excitement almost out of like, oh, this is too good to be true kind of excitement. And it's not so necessary to help you or anyone with how to deal with exciting triggers, like exciting emotions. But we do need help with the ones that put us down and actually takes us out of this creative flow. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and certainly hope this was understandable. Otherwise, I have to do this live stream again. And then I might have put up 2 different ones, so I'll see. I'll check what I would do. So if you don't see a different version, or a second version, then I hope this was good enough, and I'll see you back tomorrow. Bye.